too?
I do. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wine, Women, and Words. We're a little earlier this evening because I'm actually in North Carolina tonight. So Diana was kind enough to inhale her dinner, so I didn't have to stay up until midnight.
Which I'm sure you appreciate.
I do. I really do. But in all honesty, I'm probably going to stay up until midnight anyway because I don't know if you ever heard of this series, but there's a series on PBS. Is it PBS? It's like the North Carolina affiliate for PBS. They did a series on Queen Victoria that my mom and I have been binge watching.
Yes, I love that. Young Victoria, right? With yes, I love that. I was so mad because I missed the first episode. I forgot to record it and I couldn't get it. So
oh, no, sorry. It's not Young Victoria. It's Victoria on Masterpiece. It's with
that one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that one? Okay. Yeah,
it's the same one. Yeah, it's the one the girl who played Clara in Doctor Who.
Yes.
Was yeah, she's Victoria. Yeah, I forgot to I have Masterpiece Classics set to record and I thought it was coming to Masterpiece Classics. And I just assumed that it was recording. And then when I realized it had premiered, I missed the first episode. And it didn't record it because it was Victoria on Masterpiece. And so it didn't register on my DVR to actually record it. And I was so mad because I couldn't get the first episode. Well,
it's still all on demand, so.
I didn't have PBS on demand on my cable.
Oh, well, that's lame.
I know. That's so messed up because they have so many great shows. I love Masterpiece. And they do a reality television show where it's a British show where they're actually putting people in Victorian slums.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they have to try to live like they're in the Victorian slum. It is. I saw the first episode last week, and I missed this week's. But yeah, it's so fun because they're like having to actually live like they're Victorian.
I would not survive. I would get voted off the island on like the first episode.
No, you don't get voted off the island. If you can't survive, that's how you get kicked out.
Oh dear. Yeah. I decided after watching this, like that, if you're going to be Queen of England, that was the perfect time to do it. Mm-hmm. Because you're not in like the 1500s where you have to like go pee in a hole somewhere. You have.
They at least, they had outhouses. So you mean.
It was more survivable, and you had awesome fashions. The fashion in the show was amazing. The
writer of the show actually wrote a book.
Mm-hmm. We're on the very last episode. We thought my mom didn't record it, but we found it on in demand. Thank God.
So what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight, I'm drinking a Pinot Grigio by Mark West. It's a wine that my mom drinks that she recommended to me, and I had one of their reds before, the Pinot Noir. That was really good, and this one is delicious.
I almost got a Pinot Grigio tonight too, but when I stopped, because I had to do 2 stops today. But I did one on my lunch break and then the other one on my way home because you can't leave wine sitting out in your car like halfway through work. At least I can't without the temptation of drinking it. But I stopped at Total Wine & More and I found the Dark Horse limited release rosé.
Oh, I want to find that.
Night. It's good. It's tasty. It's not too sweet. It's really light. It's got kind of a crisp crispness to it that you find in like some of the Chardonnays.
Oh, I really want to go find that now. I didn't even know that Dark Horse made a rosé.
Like I said, it's limited release. They just came out with it recently.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna have to go look for it because I think Dark Horse might be one of my new favorite wines.
I think it's definitely one of my new favorite wines too, and it's the unofficial official wine of Moritz.
The tie-in to Bad Horse. It's just too good to.
It's one of our favorite wines. It's on the recommendation wine list.
When we come out with our our calendar, we're gonna have our recommendation wines, and Dark Horse will definitely be on it for sure.
Absolutely.
So we are reading. I don't have my copy. It's in my room.
I have mine.
Okay.
Desirable. This lovely cover.
I know, it's beautiful. So we're reading The Undesirables this month by Chad Thuman, who will be on with us next week. I can't believe, no, next week? 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Oh my God, May is not over. I'm sitting here going, oh my God, I have to read the rest of this book in a week.
You got more time. You're okay. You're cool.
I completely lost track of like what day it is, what date. I need school to start back. I started on my master's degree in like 3 months, and then I will have sanity back in my life.
Yay!
I know.
So how far are you in the book? Because
I'm not that far, to be honest, which is why I was freaking out.
Okay.
Peter, I think I'm like a couple pages away from meeting Duck.
Ah, okay.
Because I saw the name Duck, and then I saw the word dog, so I know that Duck is a dog. And I remember you talking about the dog.
Yes, I was very obsessed with this dog to the point where I was messaging Chad going, this dog, nothing bad better happen to this dog. I am attached to Duck. It's my favorite character in this whole damn book. You better take care of Duck. And it was before the festival, and we hadn't really fully met yet. And he was like, I don't know what to say, but yeah.
Okay, stranger who is reading my book.
And is getting really paranoid about one of my characters.
So Karen is with, she's in the potato field with Ina and her boyfriend. Bobby is kind of annoying me.
He's annoying you?
He's very sweet, and he's 17 or 18. So, and he's in love, and it's very romantic, but there's a huge gap in logic in thinking that just by joining the army, you will be able to find one person in Leningrad.
Yeah, Leningrad. Which, I mean, come on, it's totally plausible, right? I say this sarcastically. I totally say this sarcastically.
It's very sweet, but he's so I'm.
And, you figure Peter's not that much older than them. I'm sorry. My dog has decided to be a spoiled brat. Peter and Bobby aren't that much different in age, but you see a definite difference in maturity between the two characters.
Well, yeah, and Peter, he just got reassigned to the new unit because they think that he is the destroyer of tanks. So when Diana texted me earlier this week and asked me, where I was, and I said I'm definitely Team Peter because Bobby is a little irritating. Like, I feel like if I went out with Bobby, he would be really sweet for like the first. We would maybe last like 6 months-ish. Like, the romantic in him would keep him going for a while, but then it would get annoying.
You thought 6 months with him? I think I'd last maybe a month, if that. If we got past the first date, because I feel like I'm the kind of girl that would be really intimidating to Bobby. And the kind of girl that Peter would find very entertaining. I'd be able to keep him on his toes, or at least annoying him to the point where he would feel entertained long enough to stick around.
No, I would probably give him like 6 months, but then he would be like too clingy and too like, no, be a man.
Well, I think that's one of the things, especially in this early part of the book, is that he's still very much a high school college kid, just this idealistic college kid.
Does he man up a little bit as the book goes on?
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm still Team Peter through the book.
This could be the first time that you and I are rooting for the same guy. It's kind of...
I know, this is strange. I'm not sure how to deal with this.
Well, we'll see what happens with Bobby. I might switch teams. But
I mean, the two of us on the same page when it comes to liking a character.
Yeah, weird.
I mean, it's like the world, pigs might start flying.
Well, we liked the same character before. We liked, what is his name? Stanton from...
Oh, yes. Yes, from Native
Yeah,
Star.
that one.
Yeah. I adored Stanton. I adored the first 2 books in that series.
Yeah,
the third and fourth not so much.
But anyway, so there is precedence for us liking the same character.
That is true. So shall we start our journey?
So Diana had the brilliant, it's a very fun idea, but Diana had the brilliant idea today that we would do a journey around the world in 80 books. And my response was, is it really going to be 80 books? Because I don't think we can do that in an hour. Which
I love the fact that she was like 80 books. We're not going to be able to do that in an hour as opposed to 80 books. I can't name that many books. I stuck to books that I've read. I don't know about you. Did you do that too?
I did. I was talking to my mom while we were watching Victoria, and I was like, okay, I need England. And I know that this book was set in England, but I didn't finish it, so I can't use that one. So I did books that I finished.
I did 2 books on here that I'm currently reading, and then those totally count because I feel like I'm there while I'm reading them. So those count if you're currently reading them.
And I did discover that I am ridiculously weak in the Asian continent.
Oh, I've got a good recommendation for you on that.
I know you do.
We're going to have the author on later on in the year.
I know. I'm excited about those books. The book that we're doing sounds really good. So.
Oh, and if it's anything like the one that I'm currently reading, it's going to be a real freaking tearjerker.
Oh, man. Awesome. So what was your route around the world?
I start off in China, specifically Shanghai, and then I go to the South Pacific, and then I hop over to Russia, and then I go on an African safari. A lot of books from here, by the way. I have a real major wanderlust problem. So I'm on African safari. Then I go to Tunisia. And then from Tunisia, I go to Italy, then Prague, then the French countryside, then Paris, because, got to do that trip. And then I go to England, and then Scotland, and then I fly across the pond to New York City, and then I go to Georgia, and then I go to specifically Savannah, and then I go to Florida and Cuba, all in one book, then New Orleans, the Pacific Northwest, and then I finish off back in California. Because, that's not a long trip at all.
No, not at all. So I started in California, and a lot of these books go to a bunch of different places, so I just kind of picked where the majority of it was, or the most important parts, I guess I should say. I start in California. I stop off in Kansas as I'm heading east. I go to Georgia. No. Well, okay, yes, actually. Georgia and Atlanta, and then I guess you could count New York in this one also. Then New York, then I go to Scotland. I hang out in Scotland for 2 books.
Ooh.
England.
I think you know one of the books.
I know you do.
It's probably one of mine.
Actually, you know both books.
Okay.
England, French countryside, and Paris. Then Italy, and I could only think of one book in Italy, and I know that there are others.
Actually, there were 2. One that I didn't like, and then one that I really love that I've talked about on here before, and I've talked in the blog. So I need to pick up some more books set in Italy.
I know, that's what I said about Asia. Then Tunisia, and I know that's the same book that you have.
I wonder what book it is.
Russia, Jerusalem, the Himalayas, Australia, and then back to California.
I want to know what your Australia one is because I only have one that's set in Australia, and it's like partially set in Australia and partially set in England. And I almost chose it, but I was like, nah, it doesn't quite work for my trip, so I didn't do that. So interested to see what you had.
So,
over the first legs of our journey?
Sure. You go first.
Okay. All right. So for the first part of my journey, as I said, I go to China, and specifically I go to Shanghai because of the Shanghai girls. And as you've seen on Wine, Women, and Words, and as Michele said, I'm currently reading it, and holy crap, is it a tearjerker. Like, it's so... Everybody, it's by Lisa C., and everybody raves about her books, and I've been trying, like, they've been on my to-be read list for ages, and finally I picked it up, and now I see what all the fuss is about. I love the story breakdown, and this is about two girls who live in Shanghai before World War II, and at that time they called Shanghai, I don't know if they still do, but at the time they called it the Paris of the East. And they're living it up. They're basically party girls and models. And then they find out their father wasted all their money and they're broke and they're sold off to these two Chinese boys who are from America and or actually living in America. I'm not sure exactly how. It's hard to get into the details of how it works, but basically they end up going through hell, getting to America, and then dealing with being Chinese Americans in Los Angeles. And it's great because it's set in downtown LA over by where the Chinatown is and Olvera Street. So when she starts talking about Chinatown in LA, and I'm like, I know where that street is. I was just there a couple weeks ago. So it's really interesting to see the history of China and these stories that these sisters tell. And it's primarily told from the eldest sister, Pearl's perspective. And then also to see a history of Los Angeles, too. Because they get into this history of Los Angeles and what it was like to be Chinese post-World War II and after World War II. So I absolutely love the book. And there's been, was it yesterday? I was just so shell-shocked after reading it during my lunch break. That was just like, it was so bad that, okay, you know, as you guys know, I work in estate planning. I get done reading the book and I'm like, there's a part and I'm just heartbroken, crushed over what happened. And because I don't want to give anything away, but then first call after lunch is a client's daughter whose father is dying any day now. And she needs paperwork faxed to her. And she's talking to me and she starts breaking up because, you know, it's her dad dying. And I'm like, gotta hold it together. Gotta hold it together. Damn this book.
I love when books make you cry, but I hate when books make you cry.
Yeah, and then it's like, I spent like a half an hour just trying to be like, okay, gotta get back into reality. Gotta get back into reality here. So, okay, so that's my China. And then I go into the South Pacific. And that is with the Golden Dragon. Since Eva's book she goes into the South Pacific.
I have read a book in the South Pacific. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so what are your first two parts of your trip?
The first two. So the first one actually, I could have gone east or west.
Okay. And I think it's funny that you went east and I went west. I think that is actually really hilarious. It's like we're on this race.
The first book is, I'm echoing. The first book is The Silent Sister by Diane Chamberlain. So that's basically it bounces back and forth between North Carolina and San Diego, which I live in San Diego, so it's in Oceanside, but it's Oceanside. I didn't live in Oceanside, but I was there enough to where like the streets sounded familiar, and you know, you get excited when you know an area that you're reading about. It's a family drama with a murder mystery thrown in, and huge plot twists. So I can't really give anything away, but basically, this girl has to go back to her dad's house in North Carolina after he dies to take care of his estate and, you know, clean out his house, put it up for sale and all that stuff. And she finds out about a sister that she had that no one ever talked about because she was about to go on trial for murder when she killed herself. And that was when this girl was really young. She was like maybe 2 years old. So she didn't really remember her at all. And then her family never talked about her. So she decides to find out what happened, and chaos ensues. Really good story. The next book, so I go to Kansas, and that is The Melancholy Life of Annie Astor.
That's right, because it did take place in Kansas. Yes, I was thinking San Francisco, and I almost put that down for my California.
I was thinking about it too. I was like, okay, San Francisco. I could start off with Annie in San Francisco, but I really like The Silent Sister. So we've read The Melancholy Life of Annie Astor before on When Women and Words.
I've read it like twice.
And we are actually going to have Scott back next month to celebrate our 1-year anniversary.
Yes.
So The Melancholy Life of Annie Astor is a time travel book for you time travel fans. It's another murder mystery about a woman who becomes a pen pal with this older woman in Kansas City, but the problem is she is a Kansas City in the 1800s, and Annie is a woman in San Francisco in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, more modern day, we can at least say that. Yeah.
So, and amazing book, tons of symbolism and imagery in there, and a lot of hidden clues to other things that we discovered during our conversation with Scott. So that was definitely one of our favorites. I'm so excited to have him back next month. But that was my Kansas stop.
Now, you said you stopped in Russia?
I did. Now that's, the undesirables. We have to stop in there and say hi to Karen.
Yeah. Well, I actually stopped and say hello to Veronica in Russia, because my next part of my journey, I stopped in Russia for the Tsarina's, The Secret Order of the Tsar and the Tsarina's Legacy.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Well, I'm glad you thought of the undesirables, because I kind of had that down too. Whichever one you did put down, I was going to go visit. So I'm visiting with her in Russia, and those are such fun books, and so much of the Russian culture and Russian history is in that. And then I go to an African safari in Kenya for Circling the Sun, which is Beryl. I can't remember her last name. I'm always bad about pronouncing it. But it's during the English colonial period, technically, I guess you can say, about 1920, 1930s. She was around when the writer Out of Africa wrote her book. And she wrote a wonderful book, too, about Africa. So this is her story about her life. And so I stopped there. And then our Tunisia book, and make her stop in Tunisia, meet up with Michele and Julie at for Dido's Crown.
Of course.
And spend some time sightseeing in Tunisia. And how about you? You're next too.
So my next two. So we are going to Atlanta with Love the One You're With by Emily Giffin. This one bounces between Atlanta and New York, so technically it could be both. But it's a story about a young woman. She's like, well, maybe not young. Well, young, yeah. Late 20s, early 30s.
So youngish.
Youngish. Not teenagers, not early 20s, but she's married, has been for a while. Yeah. And she's a professional photographer. And one day, completely by chance, she runs into her ex-boyfriend, who was like the other love of her life before she met her husband. They bump into each other on a crosswalk, just crossing the street. And he calls her right after he sees her, and they have coffee together. And it kind of like triggers the whole, did I make the right decision, or what would my life have been like if I had stayed with him, kind of thing. And it's so good. And I just love the way Emily Giffin writes characters. She writes them in a way that you can totally relate to the main character and understand what she's going through. And one thing I love about her books, and I read all of them, is she has little cameos from other stories. So every single book is somehow connected to the other ones. So if you have read, who shows up in this one? I forget. But someone from past books pops up. So like it'll be, if you saw the movie Something Borrowed, that's Rachel and Darcy and Ethan and Dax. Dax and Rachel show up in another book. Just a quick cameo, like it's the main character's brother and sister-in-law, and they have dinner together. But I love that she does that, and she kind of like gives readers like a little update with whatever her other characters are doing, and you can see what happened just really quickly. So that's my Atlanta book. New York is The Good Girls Revolt by Lynn Povich. Obviously, that's about the lawsuit against Newsweek for gender discrimination. We did that in March. I guess that doesn't really count because it's nonfiction. But we could go by and say hi to those people. Like we actually could go and say hello to them.
Yeah, it's set in New York. It totally counts.
So those are my next two. And after that, we head over to Europe.
Yes, and with this, I start my Europe leg of the journey. And I started with the beautiful ruins in a lovely seaside resort in Italy. See, I didn't just pick an Italy place. I picked a seaside resort. I absolutely love this book. It's this story about this young Italian boy who's working. He's really not young Italian boy. He's a teenager, and he's working at this resort. It's this little hotel. It's his mother's hotel. It's run down. Nobody really comes to this place. And then this movie starlet shows up, and he likes her, but she's pregnant, and they're from two different worlds, but they end up striking up a friendship. And so there's the two of them and their story of how their lives come together, and then how they separate, and then it's a lovely, lovely story. And then from there, I go to Prague for the Daughter of Smoke and Bones series.
Forgot about that.
Yes, I love the way she talks about Prague and art school in Prague and everything. It's like I want to go there and see the wonderful architecture and see the artistry that she talks about. And that's for like her reality section. Of course, there's a whole fantasy aspect to it. And then after Prague, I go to France. And for my countryside French book, I go to 5 Quarters of the Orange, which is a countryside.
Telling me about that book.
I love that book. It's World War II, and it's an interesting story. It's about this mother and her daughter and her mother's son and what they did to survive during World War II, and in this little town, and some of the conniving things. I mean, the daughter was really just not a great person at the time. But I'd love to go to that little town and see that life there. And then I follow up with Paris. And I go to Mademoiselle de Chanel. And I visit Mademoiselle Chanel's Paris with salons at the artist houses and shopping at the Coco Chanel's places and living her life in Paris. Because, I mean, really, if you're going to do Paris, it's the way to do it. Unless you're part of the Lost Generation. Like with Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Z, and you're just living and boozing it up.
And that
Which would be my Paris experience, I swear.
So, let's see. All right, so we're leaving the United States, and we are headed to Scotland. Specifically, a tiny island off the coast of Scotland called Skye.
Yes, I will be there too.
So the book is called Letters from Skye by Jessica Brockmull. this story is really neat because it's written entirely in letters to and from the main character. Well, there are two sets of main characters. It's this woman, can't remember her name.
It's been so long since I read the book, I don't remember either.
So it's an author in Skye and an American named David, I remember his name, writes to her as a fan just to say that he loves her work. And they strike up a friendship, writing letters back and forth. And of course, they eventually fall in love. And then it flashes forward to the daughter, the author's daughter. I really wish I could remember her name. It's her daughter writing letters to her fiance, and now it's during World War II, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first one's during World War I, the second part is during World War II.
So through these letters, I mean, you obviously follow the relationship between the mother and David from being young, and she was already married at the time, and you see their relationship grow. And then there's the mystery of what happened to them, because the letters from between David and the mother stop, and it becomes the letters between the daughter and the fiance. And it's such a good book, and it's just like it's heartbreaking and it's wonderful, and
one of those beautiful heartbreaks where you're like, oh, I feel heartbroken, but I'm glad I read this. I'm glad for this heartbreak. It's though that it's better to have loved and lost than to not love at all. It's like it's better to have read this book than to never have read it at all.
It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, so I'm going to mainland Scotland. And really, I mean, this is an obvious choice. The only reason I decided to put Outlander on there is because as I was making my list, we're watching Victoria, and her uncle has a wife in the show, Victoria. Her uncle has a wife who can't be recognized in court for whatever reason.
She's a noble lady, I believe it is. She's not noble.
Oh, okay, right.
She wasn't officially, she wasn't made a lady.
So the queen gives her an honorary title so she can be welcomed at court, and she gives her the title of Duchess of Inverness. And of course, Inverness is Outlander.
An Outlander, yes. And that's where Outlander, everything begins in Outlander.
So I had to put Outlander by Diana Gabaldon because it's Jamie and it's Claire. And
I love that couple. Absolutely love that couple.
So that's my Scottish adventure. And then England, I could have put any Philippa Gregory book, but I didn't want to do that because I felt like that was the obvious choice. And for whatever reason, I know I've read a million books set in London. I couldn't think of a single one. But I did the All Souls trilogy by Deborah Harkness, which starts with the discovery of witches, which starts out in Oxford in the Bodleian Library. I don't know. And that is how, when I first read that book, I texted Diana and I said, you need to read this book. It's like the grown-up version of Harry Potter.
Yes, and also included in that text was, stop what you're doing. I don't care what you're reading right now. You need to stop this book up. So when Michele tells me something like that, I listen.
I'm very excited that they are turning that book into a TV show.
Who's picking it up? I don't remember. Was it Stars or Showtime?
I want to say Stars. I hope it's Stars.
Because I already have a Stars subscription, and Stars is getting all the really good shows.
Yeah, exactly. I have access to Stars. I don't have access to Showtime.
Exactly. American Gods, Outlander,
White Princess, White Queen.
Yes, yes. So for my British Isles expedition, I go up to England, and I almost put the Saints All Souls trilogy. I almost did that one, but I was like, okay, Michelle's going to do that one, and that's kind of the obvious choice. So I went with Austenland because I thought that would just be fun. Austenland, there's 2 books. There's Austenland, and then there's, I forget the name of the second one. But they kind of parallel the Jane Austen books, and there is the movie Austenland that's out there. That's a fun story, fun movie to watch. But basically, for Austenland itself, in that first book, there is this girl in New York City who is obsessed with Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice. Her whole life revolves around Mr. Darcy and the Pride and Prejudice story, to the point that she can't even have a healthy relationship. It's all based around Mr. Darcy, and no man can live up to Mr. Darcy. So her grandmother decides to push her to get it out of her system, and leaves her a little bit of money after she dies to go to this place called Austenland. And she goes, and it's a lot of money to go. And and it's like a reenactment of being in Austen, or in a Jane Austen book, where you show up and they put you in the clothes. You're not allowed to have a cell phone. It's total immersion. Shadow, actually, funny story, Shadow from American Gods is in it. And he plays an absolutely hilarious character in this story. He plays a soap opera star who comes in, and he's one of the actors that sweeps the girls off their feet.
Oh dear.
It's a funny show. You know that I can't remember the comedian's name, but she's this very big. She's on Two Broke Girls right now. She plays the the Polish woman with the big blonde hair named Sophie. Big blonde hair, big boobs. She's in it, and then the girl from Felicity and The Americans.
Carrie Russell?
Yes, she's in it. She's the main character in this. And so she winds up, her grandmother gives her a lot of money, but it's still not enough, and she ends up as as at the bottom level, almost servant status in this story. And so it parallels Pride and Prejudice, and it's a fun book. And then after that, I hop over to Scotland for Letters of Skye, from Skye, and I visit Skye because the imagery in that book was so wonderful that it made me want to go there, like in real life. That's like on my to travel to places.
I read an article, and I'm pretty sure it was Skye that they were talking about, that they were looking for a nurse, like real life, looking for a nurse to be the island nurse, because the current nurse is retiring after 10 years.
Damn it, if I only had a nurse.
And the doctor, and the actual doctor, only comes to the island once a month. So for everything else, the nurse has to be on call for everything. And they were like, it was like some ridiculous pay because there's literally nothing to do there. Except
it's like the town in Italy that we're going to move to that pays people to be there.
Right? Except I'm totally down for that.
We'll go visit Skye from there after we open our little bookshop.
Right. But I'm like 90% sure it was Skye. If it's not, there must be like a bunch of little islands off Scotland that I don't know about. But anyway, I thought that was fun to read about. So I'm now heading into France. First the French countryside in like the 1500s-ish. The book is called The Labyrinth by Kate Moss. And I've read it so long ago that I honestly could not tell you what it's about anymore. I can just tell you that it's amazing. It's the historical thrillers that bounce back and forth between present day and back then. And it's right at the time when the Cathars are being persecuted in the French countryside. So it's like leading up to that conflict during that time. And I can't tell you what it's about, and I really feel bad because it's such a good book. But it's like, just trust me on this one. It's worth the read. And then go to Paris to Z by Therese Ann Fowler. I have picked up my first Fitzgerald book. I found it in a used bookstore. It's Tender as the Night. I really wanted to read This Side of Paradise first, but that's okay. I started reading it, I'm like maybe a chapter in. I figured I should probably give this guy a shot before
you write him off.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he was a brilliant author.
Because this book, Z did not paint him in a flattering light. Him and Hemingway, I have serious problems with them right now.
It's going to take you a while to get over that.
It really is.
It really, trust me, I know this from experience. So for my next ones, I hop back over to the United States, and I go to New York City, and specifically I go to Little Italy, and I visit with the Witch of Little Italy.
I remember that book.
It's such a sweet book. I love that story. In this book, basically this girl, she gets out of a abusive relationship, and she moves in with her grandmother and great aunts. And the grandmother and her great aunts are like the fates. And it's all about, so much of it, there's that little bit of that supernatural bit going on in the present day stuff. Because, you know, witches and whatnot. And, you know, the traditional Italian superstitions. And then it goes into the history of these sisters and their childhood and growing up. And it goes into the culture of the people that were in Little Italy at that time. And it's such a lovely, lovely little book. I absolutely adored it. And then from there, I go to Georgia, to Savannah, for a sister of mine. I am absolutely in love with this story. I've been reading it. Actually, I haven't been reading it. I've been listening to it on audio. And it's actually up for an audio award for its audio. And this story is interesting. It's about the Jewish community in Savannah, which I didn't even realize there was a Jewish community in Savannah during the Civil War. They were slave owners. And it's the story of this one Jewish daughter who is in the countryside in Georgia. And she and her sister, her half-sister, who is a slave girl. And it's their stories told in parallel to each other, and how they move from being slave and mistress to being sisters. And it's just this wonderful story. I'm absolutely in love with it. And I've been talking back and forth with the author. I'm going to have her do a guest post on my blog. And we've been talking about it. And the characters, even the ones who are supposed to be the bad guys, are so conflicted and complicated and complex. And so I'm absolutely in love with this story. And I want to go to Savannah now, again, because Savannah is just such a cool city. And I want to find out more about the Jewish community during the Civil War. It's so fascinating. And also find a kind of bit of a conflict, because, I mean, the Jews were slaves at one point during ancient times. And you have, you know, that hardship that comes with that culture and that religion that is so much a part of them, of their history. And then to know that there were slave owners, Jewish slave owners in the South, it feels a bit like a hypocrisy in a way. But they look beyond that, and they still kept to their traditions, which was also weird for the culture then too, because like some of the slaves that came in to be their cooks, they're like, what do you mean you don't eat pork? And this is in Georgia. And in Georgia, for somebody to not eat pork was like akin to being a vegetarian. And what do you mean the milk can't be, you can't have anything with milk on it? And like the poor girl, main character Adelaide, goes to a friend's house, and her friend's like, she's an Israelite, Mama. And the mother's like, okay. And she's like, but Mama, that means she can't eat no pork. And the mother's like, well, what am I going to feed you? And it's just, it's such a lovely book. So I absolutely love it. And then from there, I go down to Florida and into Cuba for Veins of the Ocean, which was just such a powerful and deep story about family and what it means to be your own person, but yet also feel keep your ties to your family.
So, All right. So starting now is when I basically, here on out, with a couple exceptions, I'm in like Da Vinci Code world. Um, so Italy, I know I've read other books set in Italy, and I couldn't think of any of them. So Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. Um, that's basically all Rome. Usually his books kind of travel to all over the world, but that's all Rome and Angels and Demons. It's the typical, history that will rock the foundation of the Catholic Church and the secret society that's trying to bring it out, and murder and mayhem.
So it's basically just your average Monday.
Pretty much.
Ba-dum-tsh.
For Robert Langdon, it's just a regular day at the office. Then I go down to Tunisia to Dido's Crown by Julie K. Rose. And then I hop up to Russia really quick for The Undesirables by Chad Thuman. Now this one, I haven't read this book in a really long time, and I was trying to remember exactly where it was set besides Jerusalem, because I knew it was set in Jerusalem. But for the modern day characters, I couldn't remember where they were set. And I entered this title into Amazon search, and they did not print a single synopsis of what this book is about. Instead, they have the first word is like framed by a ton of asterisks, is warning. And this book, it's called 30 Pieces of Silver by Carolyn McRae. All Amazon has on this as a description is this book is too controversial to print in hardback or paperback. It's only an ebook. And the warning is, do not read this book. I'm going to pull this up because I thought this was.
I'm really curious about that. Is this serious that's a thing, or is that just the synopsis that they're like, okay?
No, this is actually here. I'm going to read what they say.
What was the name of this book again? Because I might need it now, just because of that.
It's 30 Pieces of Silver by Carolyn McRae, or Carolyn McRae. So, warning. Before you purchase this book, please be aware that 30 Pieces of Silver is an extremely controversial religious historical thriller, too controversial to be published in hardback. Please do not purchase this book if you are at all disturbed by the Da Vinci Code or the Passion of Christ revelations. However, if you like your fiction to challenge historical events, read on. And after that, all it is reviews of the book by book critics.
I mean, it's like 3 stars.
It is such a good book. So good. It's very similar to the Da Vinci Code in the same, historical or secret that will basically destroy the Catholic Church. The whole time I'm reading it, I'm sitting going, okay, it's an interesting book. It's good. I don't think it's any worse than the Da Vinci Code. I don't understand why they didn't print this book, or what the big deal is. Then you get to the end. And when you get to the end, it's like, oh my God, I totally understand why they're saying it's too controversial, because it's huge. Like, the plot twist is amazing. And I really want to go back and reread it now that I remembered it, because I read it a super long time ago. But yeah, if you want to buy it, you can only buy it. I read it on as an ebook. Apparently it's in paperback though, so. But really good book. Anyway, so that's Jerusalem. And then I go into the Himalayas for The Breath of God by Jeffrey Small. Again, kind of the same concept. Historical, religious texts that have been discovered that the church doesn't want found. This one is basically, the whole concept that the 3 main religions Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they all kind of branched from the same concept. If you ever did a religious philosophy class, it's kind of the same thing. The main character is basing his entire it's either like his thesis or he's going for his PhD on the alleged discovery of these texts by a Russian journalist back in like the 1800s, but no one has ever seen these documents, these texts. And when the Russian journalist came forward with them, he was discredited and his career was destroyed and he just was ruined. So this student goes all over. I mean, he ends up at the Taj Mahal. He ends up in like some small town somewhere in the Bible Belt. But a lot of the time at the beginning of the book is spent in the Himalayas with Tibetan monks. And I really loved seeing that culture because I've never really read any books that were in that area. And is it called a monastery for monks?
Yes.
Like Tibetan monks. So the way that he describes the monastery, the way that he describes the monks and their teachings, it's just really well written. And then I guess I might as well just wrap it up in Australia. For The Husband's Secret by Leanne Moriarty. If any of you have HBO, she is the author who wrote Big Little Lies. The mini series that just came out with Shailene Woodley, Nicole Kidman, and Reese Witherspoon. So she's an Australian writer. All of her books are set in Australia. And this one is about this woman. She's like up in the attic cleaning stuff, and she finds this letter from her husband, and it's in a sealed envelope, and it says, to my wife, to be read in the event of my death. So if you find this letter from your husband.
I'm reading it. I don't care if it says in the event.
Right?
He knows better than to leave a letter like that, and I'm gonna read it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So the first, like, she finds this letter. It's obviously not meant to be found. It's like a total accident that she finds it, and she sits there. She's sitting at the kitchen table, staring at this letter, and like, obviously, I'm gonna read it. But she does try for a while. Like she tries not to. But
I'd be like, letter for me? Well, let's pretend you're dead now. I'd read it and then I'd put it back.
Right? But really, what else are you going to do? It's not like, oh, okay, sure.
Right? Nobody's got that sense of, okay, I'm just going to put this back and save it for later. No, that's like leaving chocolate unattended on a table. You just don't leave it there.
Like, I mean, if you really wanted it to never be found, like, put it in a safe deposit box or something.
Keep a safe deposit box key. When they ask, be like, oh, it's just some stock stuff, babe. Don't worry about it.
So she reads this letter, and he reveals the secret that now that she knows it, she can't know it, but this secret has destroyed so many lives around her without her knowing it. And it's kind of like her dealing with it and realizing how much it has eaten away at her husband over the years, and like finally everything clicks for her. And it's about all of the people that have been affected by it. So it's from four points of view in the story. It's the wife, the husband, and two other characters. But it's really good. And this author is really good at plot twists. So I really enjoy reading her. And that's it.
My last two that bring me back home. After I visit Veins of the Ocean in Florida and Cuba, I hop over to the Gap of Time in New Orleans.
Oh.
And Huh?
I remember you talking about that book.
Oh, I love this book because it has so much of New Orleans in it, and it's a retelling of The Winter's Tale, and it's so well done. And there's so much just jazz and New Orleans that's infused into the story that it's absolutely lovely. And then from there, I head up to the Pacific Northwest, where I pay a visit with Mercy Thompson and the wolf pack up there.
Of course.
Yes, of course. I gotta go run with the wolves. Um, and then from there, I head over to Northern California for the Portable Veblen, which we read a
Oh,
while ago. Yeah, our first book on Wine, Women, and Words. And
well
then
done. Well played.
yes.
I'm really surprised that we wrapped that up in an hour, by the way.
I know. I had to like shorten it up because I'm like, all right, nobody needs to, hear more about Mercy Thompson because I've talked about her a lot.
Yeah, I mean, Angels and Demons, it's Dan Brown. Everyone knows what his books are about, so I didn't need to go into detail with that. I
Yes,
could
we could do 80 books within an hour, Michelle.
have.
I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but since we have a little bit of time, I forgot to ask you when we first started the show, what do you think of Karen in the book? So far?
I'm kind of like out, jury's out on her. Um, I I feel now that I'm getting into the book, it's starting to like the young adult genre is starting to like shine through a little bit. And I can feel myself getting a little frustrated with Karen. But like she's 15 years old and
No, she's like 17.
or she's 17, sorry.
17 years old, so she's a stupid 17-year-old.
So she's 17 years old. Her father, I would love to smack around. Like this man.
Father's such an idiot.
So, but it's very, very sad what happens to him. But still, like a war is raging around you and you would rather compose music than get your daughter out of away from it. But anyway, I feel like Karen is totally going to step up and surprise me. But I don't really like her in the New York side when it flashes back and Bobby is like remembering how they met. She kind of like struck me as like a little pretentious.
Yeah.
With your like, well, did he make his grandparents proud? Relax, okay? You're 16 years old.
Yeah, that's one of the things where like she's a colossal screw up in the beginning of this book, and I love how much of a screw up she is because she's not perfect, and I love characters who are imperfect. And yeah, I end up growing to like her in the story a lot more than I did in the first part.
Yeah, and I think I really liked the bartering system, like how at the opening scene when she gets the shovel from the guy who wants the kiss, who gave her the cup, who got the cup of flour from the. It's just kind of really scary, and I never realized that I had never really read anything from the Russian side of World War II and what the people were going through there.
There's not much because a lot of it wasn't released. It wasn't known, at least outside of Russia, until after the 90s because they didn't want the world to see how weakened they were during World War II.
So it's really awful. I mean, but that was happening all over Europe, that people were starving to death. But to be an American stuck in that city, I mean, at least she had the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the wits about her to try to figure out a way to survive. I probably would not have. So,
I consider her to be a survivor.
Yeah,
by the end of the book, she's a survivor. She takes the punches.
She's scrappy.
Yes, scrappy. That's a good word for it. She's scrappy.
And right now she's stealing potatoes from frozen farmland under or behind German lines.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of scary.
Yeah.
But anyway, Everyone keep reading
Mhm.
next week. Read more than I have. I'm going to try to step it up a bit
Mhm.
this week so I don't have to freak out as much before Chad comes on.
That would be a good thing.
Yes. And I hope you all enjoyed the books. We'll update the description with our lists if you want to go back and pick up any of the ones that we were talking about. And have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night. We'll see you all next week.
Bye.